Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So even though it's only day one of free agency and it technically started like 6 hours ago, basically all of the big free agents have signed at this point. There's some other guys remaining like Vladimir Tarasenko or Jeff Skinner, but for the most part, it's over. And outside of just signings, there were a couple big trades as well as extensions signed. So today, I wanted to run through four of my biggest winners and losers from day one of free agency. Now, when looking at it, I think that there were a lot of bad deals signed today. I'm not going to lie. It was way more of a player's market versus in prior years when we were dealing with the flat cap. It was far more shorter term deals at pretty low cap hits. This year, people were getting the bags 4 to 6 years at decently high cap hits. So we're going to go through it right now. Let's go. Washington Capitals are my first winner. When looking at the Washington Capitals, they traded for Jacob Chikrin, only gave up Nick Jensen in a third-round pick. Nick Jensen's 34 years old, had a bit of a down year, 2 years left at $4.1 million. The fact that they got a guy like Jacob Chikrin still in his prime, 26 years old, only making $4.6 million next year. Yes, he might need he's going to need an extension if they want him to be there long term. Honestly, they could probably just flip him at the deadline and get even solid assets for him there. But when looking at it, they acquired a very good second pair defenseman for not much. For an aging defenseman in a third round pick in 2026, who gives a shit about that? That was a great move. Then they signed probably the guy that's going to be Jacob Chikrin's partner in Matt Roy at a 7-year deal at $5.75 million per. Very underrated dude. Very underrated on LA. Didn't get a ton of ice time, especially because he was behind Drew Doughty on that second pair in Washington. He's going to have a lot of room to flourish. He's probably going to play with Jacob Chikrin next year. I could see him go for like 30 points as well as having very good defensive numbers. Great signing by Brian McClellan. He's not that old. 7 years is a little bit long, but for that cap hit at 5.75 for a good second pair guy, that's the going rate now. So I like that deal a lot. And then their final move today was signing Connor McMichael to a 2-year deal at $2 million. 33 points as a 23-year-old last season. He's easily worth $2 million right now. And over the next 2 years, that could be a fantastic deal for them going forward. My first loser is the LA Kings. When looking at the LA Kings, they lost Victor Arvidsson and they lost him to the Edmonton Oilers. Not that good, and especially considering the fact that their replacement for him is Warren Foegele, 3 years, $3.5 million. I would much rather have Victor Arvidsson given the price points that they both signed at, 3.5 versus $4 million. Joel Edmondson is a pretty brutal contract, 4 years at $3.8 million. Yes, he's big. Yes, he's physical. But he's 31 years old. He has a pretty long injury history. And again, he's just a straight like defenseman at this point for 4 years till he's 35 years old at $3.8 million. I was not a fan of really either of their signings. I think the Warren Foegele one's okay, but that Joel Edmondson one really just left a sour taste in my mouth. And as a result, I have the LA Kings as losers. My New York Islanders actually in winners. After last year, they gave out some goofy 7-year deals to Scott Mayfield and Pierre Engvall. That Scott Mayfield one's looking pretty bad. Pierre Engvall, I think, can bounce back. But this offseason, I think objectively, they had their 2 moves that they ended up making. Both were very good. Mike Riley, 1 year at $1.25 million. I thought once I saw some of the other deals rolling out for guys, like third pairing guys like Joel Edmondson getting north of 3, or not north, but like high 3s, I thought the Islanders were going to have to give Mike Riley like something in the 2s. Got him for only $1.25 million. He was a revelation for the Islanders, getting him off waivers from, I believe, Florida. He was a major impact piece, major reason why they ended up making the playoffs. So to get him back at only 1.25 was very good, as well as signing Anthony Duclair on a 4-year deal at $3.5 million, not 2.5. That would be the next level steal. But when looking at Anthony Duclair, last year had 24 goals, 18 assists in like 73 games, has been consistently around the mid-20s goals pace and around 45 to 55 points. So at $3.5 million, him in Tampa was amazing. He was like a near point per game guy once he got traded to Tampa. I think there's a decent chance that he starts on the top line left wing with Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat. We cannot be putting Anders Lee out there. So in looking at it, I think that this is going to be a fantastic value signing, especially considering the other guys that got massive money. I don't think Anthony Duclair is much worse than those guys, and he has a pretty decent track record. So I thought my Islanders actually did a very good job counter to other off seasons, maybe where they came up short and were on the loser side of this. Another loser is the Seattle Kraken. The Brandon Montour deal, I think, is fine. 7 years at around $7.1 million. He can be their number 2 or like 1B to Vince Dunn. I think he's going to bring a decent amount of offense to their blue line that they are lacking right now outside of Vince Dunn. I still don't love it. It's a decently long and decently high contract. So I'd give that like a B. But when looking at it, what makes them losers is this Chandler Stevenson deal. 7 years at $6.25 million. Last year, he was probably worth $6.25 million when he had 65 points. But this most recent year, he had 16 goals, 35 assists, 51 points. That's not even worth $6.25 million. And considering the fact that he's 30 years old on a 7-year deal, I don't really see the vision here for the Seattle Kraken, especially considering they have one of the best young forward prospects. They don't have a ton of defenseman prospects, but when looking at it, their forward prospects, their young forwards, they have so many of them. They have so many of them, like Shane Wright's going to need NHL experience, NHL time soon. Jagger Firkus isn't that far away. Berkeley Cadden they just selected. So a guy like Stevenson, I think I could easily see get squeezed out of the lineup in like 3 to 4 years. They might have to buy him out, trade him. I just don't get giving this guy that much term. It's the worst free agency deal signed yet when looking at the fact that it's going to go till he's 37 years old and he's just not really that good of a player. Or he's a good player right now, but not even $6.25 million. Another winner, the Edmonton Oilers. I spoke about Victor Arvidsson before. 2 years at $4 million. If he can stay healthy, yes, he had some injuries this year. He still had 15 points in 18 games, but the prior 2 seasons, he was around the 60-ish point pace guy on the LA Kings, which weren't the most high-powered offense. If he plays in that top 6 for Edmonton, I could easily see him go for 65, 70 points. The fact they were able to bring back Connor Brown on only a 1-year deal at $1 million, I thought based on his playoff performance, I didn't expect him to get like a massive bag, but I thought someone would give him like 2 years, $2 million at least, so 1 times 1 is fantastic. Corey Perry brought back as well, and they didn't massively overpay Warren Fogle. I don't say the Kings like massively overpaid, but they didn't overpay for Warren Fogle after a solid playoff run. They stood pat and instead upgraded in their middle 6 with Victor Arvidsson. I really like what they did. The Boston Bruins are losers. Not going to lie. Lindholm, 7 years, $7.5 million. Zadorov, 6 years, $5 million. Both overpayments in terms of term as well as AAV. These guys are like 29 years old. It's going to take them into their mid-30s. Not a fan of it. Maybe Lindholm bounces back to his 2022, 2023 form. I wouldn't bet on it. This year he had like 44 points in 75 games. His defensive metrics crashed as well. Zadorov, I think, will be utilized good in Boston. I still don't love him at $5 million, considering he's relatively his offensive upside maybe isn't there, but I think he will be solid. It's more so the Lindholm one that I am low on. And considering they did have this abundance of salary cap for this to be their 2 guys that they came away with just not on discount deals at all or just solid value deals, I'm pretty disappointed in the Boston Bruins based on what they've done this offseason. The New Jersey Devils, I thought, had a really good free agency class. I would have loved it if they got Jonathan Marchessault at 5 years, $5.5 million. I really would have loved it, but I still think based on how we saw the rest of the defenseman market go, I don't really hate Brett Pesce at 6 years at 5.5, considering Joel Edmondson gets like 3.5. OEL gets 3.5. Like Brett Pesce, he maybe didn't have the most offensively productive year last year in Carolina, but historically, he's been a very, very good second pair defenseman. I think he can be that for the New Jersey Devils. They brought in Brandon Dillon on a 3-year deal at $4 million. I think he's going to be very solid defensively for them until Anton Silyev is ready to come over in 3 years. It's like a perfect bridge deal on that left side. Stefan Noesen at 3 years, $2.75 million. A very good bottom 6 ad for the New Jersey Devils. He had 37 points in 82 games last year, only playing around 12 minutes a night. He can really add some offense as well as some solid 2-way play. So it wasn't the most flashy offseason for the New Jersey Devils, like say when they signed Dougie Hamilton or Andre Palat, but I thought it was very solid and it addressed their overall depth in defensive needs that they clearly needed to fix this offseason, as well as getting Jacob Markstrom prior. I think the New Jersey Devils should be a playoff team, especially after today. And then a loser is the Buffalo Sabres. The last loser is the Buffalo Sabres. Just very lackluster. They had like $30 million to spend. I thought the one thing that they needed was a right-handed defenseman. There were so many options out there. A Chris Tanev, a Brett Pesce, Sean Walker, who ended up going to Carolina Hurricanes. They didn't really address any of that. They ended up signing Jason Zucker on a 1-year deal at $5 million. He had like 32 points last year in 80 games. He wasn't even that good. It's a very head-scratching decision, as well as Sam Lafferty on a 2-year, $2 million deal. Like, okay, cool. But I just think that they had so much potential. The fact that they didn't really go that aggressive, even on like goofy, like 1 or 2 year deals at decently high AAVs. Now they got $20 million and a couple RFAs to spend, but like there's really no big names remaining. They're clearly not going to re-sign Jeff Skinner. I don't think Vladimir Tarasenko is coming and joining, and there's no other real true second pair defensemen out there at this point. So very disappointed by the Buffalo Sabres, more so by what they didn't do than what. Honestly, the Jason Zucker deal is just straight up bad, even though it's 1 year. So I don't like what they did do, and also considering their needs, I thought they also fumbled. An honorable mention is definitely the Montreal Canadiens. It's not really a free agency move, but getting Slavkovsky on an 8-year deal at $7.6 million is fantastic work by Kent Hughes when looking at it. In fact, he had 50 points at 19 years old this season. He's only going to get better. Even if he only turns into a 65, 70-point guy, it's going to be a fantastic contract. Tampa Bay getting Gensel is fantastic in terms of a 7-year deal at $9 million. That kind of happened last night, so I didn't really want to include it as one of my main winners. But yeah, those are my winners and losers of free agency. Mixed bag on Nashville. I really like the Marchessault deal, and I like them going for it in terms of trying to compete in the short term, but I don't like the value in the Shea and Steven Stamkos deals, as well as Carolina. They lost a lot of guys, but I do think some of the guys that they lost got massively overpaid outside of Gensel, so I don't hate the fact that they didn't re-sign them. I think Gothisbehere and Sean Walker are solid ads. I got to see what else they do. But yeah, those are my winners and losers. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? I'll be seeing the next one.